Hello, hello, my friends. Welcome to another special episode from my car. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I am not in my office. And actually, the lighting seems to be better here. But if you are listening to this as a podcast, just know that if this sounds a little weird, that's why. I am in my car after work before I head home and just thought I would go ahead and record the episode because why not? This is the way things are going today. Today, we're going to be talking about learning how to really know your triggers. In medicine, we have been taught to be quite disconnected from our bodies, even from our nervous systems, right? From our emotions. It was taught to us in order to keep us professional, right? To keep us online, to not allow ourselves to be distracted by the inconvenience of human emotions. The same way that we don't want to be distracted by our bladders or feeling hungry or tired, right? It's part of the same process that has been taught to us as very necessary. But what happens when we live this way for years, right? When we live disconnected from our emotions, from our nervous systems, from our bodies for years and years and years, all sorts of chaos ends up happening, right? We become emotionally dysregulated. We are often using numbing behaviors like endless scrolling or binge eating or any number of other sort of binges on things that ultimately don't serve us, right? We're so disconnected that we have a hard time staying present in the moment. And we usually add a little extra layer of shame if we notice a negative emotion, an emotion that we don't want to have, that we don't feel like we should have, especially in relationship to patients. And then add this little extra layer of shame on top of things, right? Beat ourselves up for having an emotion. It is not a good soup to swim in. This idea came up to me recently because I have been noticing that I have been more triggered, more activated this month. And I hadn't really connected it to this month before. But as I'm recording this, we've just entered June, and the month I'm referring to is May. My two children are born in May. And although I had known for a long time that the holidays tended to be a pretty triggering time for me because of stupid family of origin issues, I hadn't connected that that also happens every year in May when the kids' birthdays come around. People who I don't hear from much of the rest of the year start flying out of the woodwork, wanting to be involved in my family. And that's more, there's no point in me telling those stories. But what's important here is that I noticed that I have been on edge, that I have been procrastinating, that I have been, wanting to skip my exercise, right? That self-care has been a little bit more challenging. And it pulls me back in towards tendencies to, want to soothe myself with food or, just, yeah, procrastinate and not get stuff done, right? And that doesn't help me. It actually obviously makes things a lot worse, as I know many of you have experienced. But the point here is that this time I was able to stop and notice not only that I was kind of activated and that my nervous system was just kind of on edge, right? That I was feeling more anxious, more irritable, but really to get curious what was going on. Okay. This month I've been getting a lot more messages from these folks in my life, and that has me on edge. Okay. So when I connect events together, right, when I can understand why I've been feeling this way, right, that, again, my nervous system is being activated, then I have more of an opportunity to be able to do things that actually help, right? Practicing self-compassion, right? Recognizing that, yes, although what happened, quote unquote, was that I just received a text message, right, with some words written down. What my body makes that mean is that people are intruding on my family, that people are, trying to get me to do things for them. and trying to violate my boundaries. Now, again, if we observe just the circumstance, right, it was just text, but in my nervous system, it is wired to think all of those things are going on. When I can notice that, when I can engage with that and just understand that that's what's going on, right, that's when I get to practice self-compassion. That's where I get to say, you know what? It's pretty normal that I feel this way. Most other humans might feel really activated and really anxious and irritable when this is going on, right? I can lean into that self-compassion instead of judging myself if I find myself eating more ice cream or skipping exercise. Excuse me. When we are curious and aware of being in that more activated state, we can also really be tuned in and start leaning into practices that engage our mind body axis, right? Somatic practices that can help to relieve some of that emotional distress that we are feeling in our bodies, in our nervous systems, right? There are a lot of simple practices that we can engage with. And if you plan to tune in, I have a special guest episode coming up on Saturday, June 8th, with a trauma physician, trauma expert physician, not surgery trauma, but lived trauma, right? Chronic trauma. And she will share some practices with us as well. But there are lots of mind body techniques that we can engage with that will help to, I don't know, sort of discharge negative energy that we feel in our bodies. Now, that sounds a little woo to a lot of people, right? But when we are irritable, when we are anxious, right? When we are frustrated, when we are enraged, we are often having sensations in our body that are an energy that does not feel good to us. And I know that we want to say that as professionals, as, cerebral, individuals who live from the neck up, right, and are disconnected from our bodies so we don't have that inconvenient bladder fullness sensation going on. But I promise you, you have emotions that you feel in your body. You have physical sensations. It might be tightness, right? It might be nausea. It might be tension around your jaw, right? In your neck. You might find yourself clenching, right? Your muscles. Those things are not benign, right? They increase the distress in our body, right? They're very normal responses to negative emotions. But when we just ignore our feelings and ignore those sensations, we do not feel good. And so, starting to learn some simple mind body practices, some somatic treatments that we can use anytime, anywhere, right? There are techniques of variable durations, things that you can do quickly, sort of on the go, to help move the energy through, right? To help allow your emotion to be there, to use that self-compassion, right? It's normal that I feel this way. I'm a human who's having an emotional experience and have a way to sort of move through that emotion so that you can move on. So, one mind body practice that I really love is this wonderful shaking technique taught to me by my friend Delia, who's a palliative care and hospice physician. And it's as simple as shaking your hands. If you're watching, you can see it on the video, but shaking your hands vigorously, like you're a dog trying to shake all the water off of your body. You shake your hands, you're flinging that water away. When you do a practice like that and you engage with it for as little as 30 to 60 seconds, right? A really short duration of time, although it feels a little silly to do that for 30 to 60 seconds. It helps your body, helps your nervous system, right? Helps the muscles to release the tension of the negative emotion. Such a helpful practice. And as I shared, right, there are longer and shorter practices. There are things that our bodies innately know how to do. So that is one little physical thing. Laughing, crying, dancing, humming, all of these things, have a sort of rhythm to them and they help bodies to relieve stress. If you've ever watched videos of a deer running away from a predator, after they stop, their bodies shake. And that is them releasing the tension. of the fight or flight response, right? We need to kind of come down from that. So we've talked about self-compassion. We've talked about mind-body therapies. What else? When we find ourselves being triggered or activated and we get curious about it, that gives us another opportunity to be able to figure out what boundaries do we need to have in place, right? Sometimes those are boundaries that we might ask someone else to respect, right? Telling someone, no, I can't help you with that, or it's not okay to talk to me like that, or, we don't have time to do a good job with that today. We're really going to have to limit it. Or, when you show up late for your appointment, we have less time to be able to spend together, right? You might need to work on sort of setting those boundaries with another human. Now, do you control whether or not they respect those boundaries? You do not, but you can still set the boundary and you can still maintain the boundary. Sometimes the boundaries need to be unspoken, right? But still honored by yourself for your own sake. And that is often something that I need to turn to in my experience of, the state of activation or feeling triggered. When I am receiving these messages that come into my body as being very intrusive things, I will make choices such as muting individual people on my phone so that if they send me a message, I don't actually receive it unless I go to look for it, right? When people have repeatedly not respected our boundaries, or you're in some kind of a position where you're not able to express the boundaries to them, having an internal boundary, having a quiet boundary, something that you yourself practice in order to help your emotional self, to help your own nervous system, is something that is often useful. But again, we can only really think about boundaries when we have practiced self compassion, when we have noticed that we feel a certain way, when we've gotten a little bit curious about it, and usually when we've moved through some of the difficult energy, right? If I'm feeling very anxious, very enraged, very frustrated, very resentful, I'm probably not going to make the best choice when it comes to boundaries. I'm probably either going to go a little too far or I'm going to be in a state where I tell myself that, nothing works. I'm just the victim and that's just the way it is, right? Not helpful. Been there, done that. So think about this for yourself. Oh, I'm having problems with my earpiece here. Okay, let's see if that's any better. Where do you find yourself getting activated and having more of a response than you would like to have? And we can think about this at a small level, right? We don't need to go to our worst experiences or, things that are so traumatic, for example, that it would be difficult to talk about. I do think it is important for us to get help with that. So don't misunderstand me, but I'm just saying for the purpose of trying to lean in and understand this part of our experience a little better, let's pick something that doesn't feel off limits, that doesn't feel too big or too scary. Tell me about a situation in your own life, and you can say it out loud if you're listening to me. Tell me about an experience in your own life, especially one that comes up repeatedly, where you feel activated and you would like to change your experience. What is happening? What do you feel in your body? Does it make sense for you to have these feelings, right? Have you felt like you couldn't voice your opinion? Have you felt shamed for something? Have people shut you down? Have people shut you out? Right? Do you find that a certain kind of person reminds you of a certain other kind of person and that you have more of a response, to a patient, for example, who reminds you of, I don't know, an ex-boyfriend, a brother, things like that? Know the circumstances, know what you feel in your body, Have compassion for yourself. Get curious. Learn some of these mind body techniques so that you can quickly sort of discharge some of that negative energy as you are being kind to yourself and figure out what boundaries do I need in place in order to take care of myself? Not because we can 100% prevent people from triggering it or activating us. Of course, we can't do that 100%, but there's probably a way for us to help ourselves, right? To take care of ourselves, to know that something is activating and to make some different choices. What I plan to do is literally to write myself a message that will arrive to me on my phone next year, probably at the end of April, to remind me that May ends up being a difficult month for me. And to be kind to myself, to budget in perhaps some extra time off, to know that people who have shown me that they're going to act in a certain way, to know that they're likely to just keep doing that. And I have choices that I can make in how I respond, how I talk to myself, how I talk to them. And that gives me agency and power. In my particular circumstances, these are not people that I feel like cutting completely out of my life, but I do choose to limit my contact with them. And now that I have this awareness that this is a time of year that tends to bring it out again, the same way for me the holidays does, I can take better care of myself next year because I've sat and figured out this experience. Now, I know that that might sound really simple and really obvious to people, but I can't tell you how often this comes up where we don't really understand, why did I have such a big reaction? There's something in your experience that has embedded itself in your body, in your nervous system, that has created this. You are so human. This is normal for mammals. This is normal for caring professionals who've been taught to disconnect and disengage from their bodies and who need a little help to be able to navigate difficult emotions. I know many of us feel silly for being at this point in our lives and struggling with difficult emotions or struggling with bodily symptoms or our nervous systems being activated, being very anxious, being hypervigilant. This is the impact of our work on our very human bodies. We see people in some of their worst states, and we get asked to do things that aren't really in alignment with our human needs, right? We have lack of sleep. We don't get to go to the bathroom when we want to. We don't get to eat normally, right? There are many limitations on the way that we are asked to work. And what I'm asking you to do is to not just accept that as the status quo and to continue feeling disconnected from yourself and like you have no control. Again, we do not have control over all of the things. We have more control than we realize, but it takes intention, it takes curiosity, it takes being able to understand what's activating us and to choose to make different choices, to choose to take care of ourselves, to choose to discharge some of that energy with these mind body practices. The better you engage with understanding and allowing your emotions and finding ways to help your body and help your brain, the better things will be. The more agency you will have, the less you will feel like a victim of your circumstances. This is really important work, my friends. This is work that has made a huge difference in my life. And I see it over and over again in the physicians that I coach. I see it in physicians who really struggle with shortening the time that they spend working on notes or in the inbox because they have an underlying belief that they can't say no, they can't inconvenience people, they can't keep people waiting, right? That comes from someplace, and we don't have to do a deep dive psychoanalytical analysis to just recognize that if we're struggling with charting and all the charting courses in the world aren't helping it, there's something else going on. You'd be surprised how often that comes up. There are deeper issues at play, and it has to do with being disconnected from our emotions, from our nervous systems. It is not your fault, but please know that no one can fix that for you. People can help you with it, but they cannot fix it for you against your will. So please, 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 please take good care of yourself. Choose to do this work. Choose to get curious. Choose to share the compassion that you share for other people with yourself. My friends, that's what I have for you today. Thank you for joining me from my car because that's just how we're going today. I want to share with you that I am making a slight change to the way that I am doing this podcast, in that I plan to bring you episodes featuring just me with this ongoing work that we do together every Tuesday, as we have been doing for 2+ years now. But what I'm going to pivot to is that I will have additional guest bonus episodes twice monthly, usually on the first and third Saturdays of the month. And you don't want to miss this week's upcoming guest, which will be featuring on June 8th. So please be sure to catch that episode. Really, this is just more episodes for you. So we're trying out this format. I hope you like it. And please feel free to drop me a line. Let me know, what you think of it. And please, 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 as always, please leave a rating and review, especially on iTunes. Your ratings and reviews, including stars and words, my friends, stars and words, helps other people to be able to find the program when they are searching in their podcast apps. Growing the podcast is something that I'm really committed to, because I know how many of you are listening and feeling like these words matter, that you are getting some healing out of this. And I know because a lot of the people who come to work with me as a coach have been longtime podcast listeners. So if that is something that you're interested in, of course, please reach out and schedule your free call with me so that we can talk about working together. But please, please, please leave a rating and review so that others like you can continue to benefit. Take care. Have a wonderful week. And until next time, bye bye.